Welcome back to MrJayDM. Sorry it's been a while since I posted a video. My last video was the multi-point or dual point to multi-point, and I think I'm going to remove that video just because it's terrible. It's the tutorial is terrible. So I'm going to re-edit it and then upload it again. So yeah, pretty much that's what's going to happen. But anyway, so about a week ago, my wife's 2006 Honda CRV, it wouldn't start. It was like the starter was dead. And also the key was getting stuck in the ignition. So I didn't really know what to do because it's a K series. There was no engine light. I didn't, I'm not very familiar with them, the K series. Mostly D and B series, some F series here and there, but EFs, EGs, EKs. That's what I'm very familiar with. So with this car, I didn't know exactly what to do because there was no engine light. So in order to get the key out, I had to disconnect the battery because I do know there is a solenoid under the I guess the ignition, right by the ignition switch, that will lock the key in, and when you disconnect the battery, then it is no longer energized and it won't, it'll allow you to pull the key out. So anyway, I got on the good old Facebook discussion board, the second gen CRV group, and I posted my question, posted my symptoms, and people came back with the ignition switch is bad, the safety neutral switch. They want me to check the signal wires to the starter. Somebody said the ground wires are corroded. There's just a bunch of different things because there's no engine code, so you don't know exactly what it is. So, I started with the ignition switch, mainly because the starter is buried. It's under the intake manifold, and it's relatively new because I just replaced it not too long ago. I went to the junkyard and got an ignition switch and swapped it in. It worked. Worked great for about a week. No problems the whole week. Drove it wherever, grocery store, doctor's appointments. My wife drove it for work. Not a problem. And then all of a sudden, one morning, I go out to take my daughter to a doctor's appointment, and it just didn't start. It did the same thing, except for all the dash lights were on, and the RPM would flop up and down. So then we had to take the Beagle, and it was like 2,000 degrees outside, and the Beagle has no AC, so that kind of sucked. But when we got back from the doctor's appointment, I went ahead and bought a brand new ignition switch, which was like $50. I'm Rock Auto, it's like 20, but I had to have it, so I bought one, and it still did not work. So other people were saying, see if it starts when it's in neutral. So I stuck the car in neutral, and it would not start still. Now, I did get it to start one time in neutral, but it happened once. And so the next step I took was I went ahead and replaced the neutral safety switch because, it's like a $60 part. Screw it, I might as well. The old one's old, probably original to the car. So I replaced it, and the car started. So, hey, the neutral safety switch was the problem. But I feel like that doesn't explain all the weird dash lights and the RPM. I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. I didn't trust it. And so I drove it around a little bit. Everything was fine. And then the next morning, I tried to start it, and it wouldn't start. So the next easiest thing was to clean the grounds. So I disconnected all the grounds on the from the battery to the frame to the transmission. I cleaned them, I put them back, and then there's also another ground on the passenger side on the post mount. And I cleaned that, reinstalled it, and the car started fine. No problems. But I still wasn't convinced that this was the problem. I was still not getting the engine light. So we drove it around for like another day or two, and then I get an engine light. It was a P0123, which is the pedal accelerator position. It's not the TPS, but it's like it's this little box that's under the hood that controls the throttle body, I guess, because it's a drive-by-wire system. And so I cleared the code. I drove it around. The code never came back, but while I was driving, the VTEC code came on. And so it wouldn't rev over like 3,000 RPMs. It would only switch to like first and second gear. And so now we have this VTEC code. And I've had this problem before with my daughter's 2006 Element. And what I did was I replaced the VTEC solenoid with a new gasket, new screen. And the screen could just be clogged, but I don't know. And it's got plenty of oil, so it wasn't low on oil. It wasn't starving for oil. So I went to the junkyard again and bought a used VTEC solenoid. You know, yeah, it's used. It may not be good, but I was going to try it out because I can always take it back. And plus, a new VTEC solenoid is like $120. This thing was like $20 at the junkyard. So it was a pretty easy swap. I've done it before. It was easy to remove. There's only 3 bolts. They're all the same size. Can't get them confused. Got a new screen, or a new gasket with the new screen. The old screen wasn't that bad. I mean, it had particles in it, but it wasn't completely clogged. You can still see through it. But there is a big difference between the old one and the new one. The new one, you can clearly see straight through it. So we put the new gasket on with the clean screen and put the new VTEC on the engine. And then the car started, but when I revved it, it was like limited at 2,000 RPM. So I was like, what the hell? I guess this VTEC's no good. So I turned the car off. I went and took a look at the VTEC, and of course my dumb ass did not plug the VTEC wires back in. So I plugged them back in, went and started the car, cleared the codes, drove it around, and no problems. So with all that being said, I mean, the car runs great now. You know, we don't have any problems. My wife drove it about an hour and a half away, over 100 miles just the other day, and she didn't have a single problem. I'm not really convinced that the VTEC was the final problem. I don't know why that all of a sudden started. You know, maybe it was just the grounds. Maybe the grounds were corroded. I don't really know. I mean, the grounds weren't that bad. They were a little, you know, rusty, but nothing major. You know, most of the connectors were clean, and none of it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me why the car acted the way it did, and why all the dash lights would go crazy, and why the RPM would plop up and down, and the relays would click and the car wouldn't start. I don't know. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. But hopefully she's good. And when I did change the oil, there was some very, very fine, like, plastic pieces. It wasn't metal, because the magnet didn't attach to the metal, or they did not attach to a magnet. So I'm thinking it's probably the guides that are starting to break apart. You know, maybe not. I don't know. But this channel has 0 K-Series content, and I'm not very familiar with K-Series. So over the next couple months, I'm going to get a whole nother K-Series engine for this car that I can just slowly rebuild and become familiar with the K-Series engines, because, you know, that's the new technology. Everybody's swapping K-Series into everything, and I think I would like to eventually swap my red wagon to K-Series. So, you know, I think getting an engine for this car and rebuilding it slowly, and then when this one finally takes a shit, you know, I can swap it in and I'll have like a backup motor. Because, you know, we really like this car. We bought it for $4,000. We bought it like right before the pandemic. Actually, we bought it with our very first pandemic stimulus money, and we got it for $4,000. Yeah, it has been wrecked, but it's in really good shape. You know, it's got all the options my wife wanted: the sunroof, the leather, the heated seats. And, you know, it's a nice car. It's really a nice car, and it drives really nice, drives really smooth. And, you know, as long as I take care of it, it's going to last, you know, 400,000 miles. Our last CRV, the 98 CRV, we got it with like just over 200,000 miles. And we drove it to like 280,000 miles before we really had any major problems. And that's when we parked it and bought this one. We bought this car with just over 200,000 miles. It's got almost 230 now. And, you know, my wife drives a lot more now with her job, so she's going to put more miles on it. I think getting a backup engine would be smart, because right now car prices are just, they're insane. They're crazy. To buy a new car in this market is a nightmare. And so we are going to get a K-Series so we can have some K-Series content. And it's going to be a while, because I'm gonna pull the motor from the junkyard, and it's got to be the right motor too. And then I'm going to buy all the parts, and then just, you know, get it machined and slowly rebuild the whole engine. All new sensors, new everything. And I would like to find another transmission that has relatively low miles on it. So eventually I'm going to do a complete swap in this car. I mean, with the same engine, same transmission. But anyway, I'm rambling on at this point. And I'm still not 100% convinced that I fixed the problem. And I still don't know what the actual problem was. It just seemed like there was a new problem every single time. Every day there was a new problem. So, you know, it is what it is. It's running great now. So I'm just gonna, you know, cross my fingers and hold my breath. And hopefully we don't have any more problems. And of course, when we do, it'll be during the winter when it's freezing cold, because that's usually how it works out. But anyway, this is the story of my wife's 2006 CRV and the problems I've been having in the past, you know, like 3 weeks. And that's kind of a reason why I haven't uploaded a video in a while. So with all that being said, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you all in the next video.